topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning, Florida. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the finest experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. And I want to just take a minute to thank you for all the emails that you send us requesting different types of shows you want, shows you've enjoyed. Our first show, which it's gotten so big, we run it twice a month. We get so many letters from people thanking us for offering an expert like this. And I just want people to know we do read all your emails. We appreciate it. And let's go to our guest, Ray Ferrara with Probate Management Group. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Steve. And as always, happy Monday. Great way to always start the week.
Absolutely. This is like the easiest show for me to do. And, we have questions, and just the way you answer the questions, people say that they appreciate how you answer the questions. And we're just so lucky we're so lucky that we actually do this show twice a month, which we don't do with maybe one or two of our other shows. But we'll be back again with you 2 weeks from today. Ray, as always, tell people about Probate.
Thank you, Steve. Probate Management Group is a financial planning firm, first and foremost, with offices located in Clearwater and Tampa. Most people think of a financial planner, they think investments, and clearly we do a great deal in the area of investments, in that we manage about $2 billion on behalf of our 1,100 clients. But the fact is, investments, just like estate planning, retirement planning, education planning, budgeting, asset allocation, asset protection, all of these are subsets of a financial plan. And so we really believe, as people come to join us, that kind of the first step is always to do some type of a written financial plan in working with brand new clients. We always offer a 1-hour free consultation in either our Clearwater or Tampa office, or for those who would prefer, particularly those that are outside of the Tampa Bay area, happy to do it by Zoom. And it's just, you have your own personal questions. We try not to answer directly, give advice here. Ours is more of an educational nature on this show. But if you would like to take advantage of that 1-hour complimentary consultation, just reach out to our office at 800-633-3049, 800-633-3049, or send us a email at info at provise.com, and that's provise.com, and we'll be sure to set up a consultation with one of our 14 CFP advisors.
Ray, I got to tell you, we have been bombarded by questions about tariffs. Many people do not understand, or let me put it this way. There's a lot of people who think they understand, but when you get into some of the emails we've gotten, they really don't. So tariffs weren't they to start yesterday or today?
No, they're actually supposed to start at midnight tonight.
Okay.
And will be effective then on Tuesday. And essentially what happens with a tariff is whoever the company is that is importing the goods from outside of the United States has to pay a fee to the U.S. government, and it's called a tariff. In reality, it's sort of a form of a tax that says goods and services coming in from, in this case, Canada and Mexico will be taxed at 25% with the exception of a few items out of Canada, which include oil, will be taxed at that level. From China, they'll be adding another 10% on top of the tariffs we already have imposed on Chinese goods. So that money then has to be paid to the U.S. Treasury by the company that imports the goods that come into the country. The importer pays it and then passes it on to whoever the supplier is going to be, if it's a third-party relationship or if it's direct with the company. And then the question, of course, becomes, who's going to end up ultimately paying that? Will it be paid by the company in Canada that ships it? In part, yes, that's exactly where it's going to come from, because whoever's bringing it into the United States, they're going to pass it on to the U.S. government, but they're not going to pay it themselves. So the company from Canada gets charged. And then the question becomes, since everybody's had to pay more for it, who ultimately will pay for it? And many people believe that the consumer will. But reality says that there's some of it that does reach the consumer, but some of it is absorbed by the manufacturer. Other amounts are absorbed at the import level. But I think most economists would tell you that the consumer is going to end up paying the greatest amount of the pass-through on the tariff, which it has been estimated that if the tariffs were to stay in effect for a long period of time, that let's say over a year, that it would increase inflation by 0.4%, which doesn't sound like that much, but that's a 20%, roughly a 20% increase from where inflation is today. And so that is a dramatic increase in terms of a percentage increase. Stephen, from an investment point of view, it is hard to find any long-term positive benefits that come out of a tariff that is a trade war that's going to last for a long period of time. Many people have said that Trump is going to use this as a negotiating tool. Perhaps he is. There were some early reports this morning that there were conversations over the weekend, especially with Mexico. There's conversation about this being something where it might be temporary. And for President Trump to say, see, we were able to get the reduction fighting fentanyl, immigration, et cetera. It remains to be seen. Our hope is that this is a short-term ploy to get Canada and Mexico to the bargaining table, and that they quickly resolve it, because there is no one that wins with tariffs. Tariffs are, in general, negative.
So for the long-term investor, what do you think this is going to mean?
Well, if the tariffs stay on for an extended period of time, our opinion is that it will have an impact on inflation, because it will raise the cost of goods, particularly automobiles, lumber, and all of the associated parts of those industries, amongst many others. There's no exception to the tariff. Nobody was excluded from the tariff. So for the long term, it's going to have a negative impact. It will reduce our GDP. It will increase inflation. It will not create jobs. It will probably cost jobs. And so that's why we're hoping it'll be a relatively short-term phenomena, perhaps weeks, maybe lucky if it's days. If more than 3 months, it's going to have a dramatic impact on our economy, none of which will be positive in our opinion.
We just got a text from a listener enjoying the show. I've heard that Saudi Arabia is going to invest $600 billion into our economy. Did I hear that right? And what does that mean?
Well, Saudi Arabia is certainly our closest ally and largest ally in the Middle East, Israel itself. And during the first Trump administration, he had a very close relationship with the Saudis and was able to get them to invest into American enterprises. The Saudis have committed to giving $600 billion or investing $600 billion into America to build primarily to build manufacturing plants. And so that's a long-term positive. Depending upon how they do that, it could be a huge advantage for us. If they do that, it should help create jobs, which will be an important platform for the president to show. But if they do it in partnership with other companies or existing companies, where much of that capital would remain in the United States and not find its way back overseas, that would be a much bigger plus than if they just come in and own everything and the money flows back to Saudi Arabia's sovereign fund. So it looks at the moment that would be a very positive sign, but $600 billion, which is a lot of money in a $25 trillion economy, it is, I don't want to call it a drop in the bucket, but
I understand.
It's not going to have as big an impact as one would feel.
Here's another text from Scott in Temple Terrace. I have a lot of money tied up in the stock of the company I used to work for, and it has appreciated a lot. I don't want to own it, but I will get hit with taxes. What do I do?
Well, first of all, congratulations that however you ended up getting the stock that appreciated so much, and that it's helped you create the great wealth that it sounds like it has. The first thing is paying capital gains taxes implies one thing: you made a profit, and there's never anything wrong with making a profit. The second thing is that capital gains are taxed, but taxed at long-term capital gains are taxed at a favorable maximum of 20%. Now, depending upon what your tax bracket is, and you should be working with your CPA and your own financial advisor, you can just set up a program to liquidate this over an extended period of time. That would be one option, and then diversify into other areas. You may want to consider buying some options, actually some puts, to protect you on the downside, so that if your stock goes down, the puts will go up in value, and they'll help offset that with those options. So those are two things to do. But keep in mind, paying capital gains taxes, it's a matter of time before you eventually will have to do it. And as I've said before on the show, there are only three ways to deal with tax efficiency. The first is you can give it away to charity, and the tax goes away. But the problem with that, obviously, is the stock comes off of your net worth statement, and it goes onto the net worth statement of the charity. You've done a good thing for sure by doing that, but from a personal standpoint, other than getting a tax deduction and feeling good about it, doesn't really solve the capital gains problem on all the rest of the stock. So the second thing you can do is die, because when you die, you get a step up in value. Now, that's not very good for you, Stephen, but your heirs will appreciate the fact that all of those capital gains will disappear. And Stephen, my fear in a situation like yours is that people hang on to this stock too long in a company that's done really well. it becomes a significant amount of their assets. And often what happens as a result of fear of paying the capital gains tax is that eventually the stock goes back down to what you paid for it and the capital gains disappear, but so does your wealth. So there's no easy way to deal with capital gains. But please visit with your CPA, your tax advisor, visit with your financial advisor. If you don't have one, then take advantage of our 1-hour complimentary consultation in either our Tampa or Clearwater offices or by Zoom. And we'll be happy to chat about various alternatives and try to give you some specific advice as to what you might be able to do in your own unique situation. And all you have to do is call our 800 number, which is 800-633-3049. That's 800-633-3049. Or shoot us an email at info, I-N-F-O, at provise.com. And that's Provise.
Ray, there's talk in Congress about eliminating the tax deduction for investing into retirement plans. Do you really think that this is a possibility?
Stephen, it's a scary thought, something which has traditionally been done for as long as I can remember in my 54 years of being in the business, and well before I got into the business back in 1971. The fact is that Congress, in looking to extend the tax cuts from 2017, needs to find ways to raise other revenue and or cut down on expenses. Clearly, Musk and with the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE as it's been dubbed, DOGE, is trying to look for expenses to eliminate. And that'll be a good thing. But they're going to have to find additional revenue. And this is one of the conversations that Congress is having, is about eliminating the tax deductibility of contributions to retirement plans. For obvious reasons and selfish reasons, I will admit, I hope they don't even get that off the table in their discussions. I think that when you look at the money that is built up in retirement accounts, not only providing potential security for people in retirement, but providing money that goes into the stock market and to the bond markets, which eventually finds its way to the corporations to do investing, et cetera. I think it would be a terrible mistake. Having said that, I've seen Congress make some terrible mistakes in the past over the last 5 decades, in fact. But this is one that is a true head scratcher, and certainly one that we don't have, that we hope will not happen.
So Trump's been in office now for several weeks. What would you say, one or two stocks would you recommend over the next 4 years? Well, you got the crystal ball.
Back in the first term for Trump, Stephen, everybody thought the oil and gas industry would do extremely well under him, because even then he was drill, baby, drill.
Right.
The reality of it is the oil and gas sector was one of the worst, if not the worst sector during the 4 years that he was president. And ironically, everybody thought that would continue under the Biden administration because of his push on renewable energy, when in fact the oil and gas industry during the Biden administration was one of the best sectors during his four years. So it's really hard to pick a sector, let alone pick an individual company or two as to who is going to survive. Very famous quote of mine is, "What seems to be seldom is." And As an example, we were talking about tariffs earlier. It seems that it could last for a long time, but hopefully, it doesn't. When it comes to picking individual stocks, not something to give to give that kind of advice here on air. If you want my advice, and if you're not a well-schooled person in investing, first of all, look to find a certified financial planner, CFP professional, of which we have 14 at Provise, and seek out their advice. That's if you don't choose to do that, then I would tell you simply just invest in the S&P 500. The S&P 400 would be another one, which is small and mid-sized companies, giving you a broad breadth of the entire market, because we believe that over the next 4 years, regardless of the different things that happen, there's going to be an opportunity to make money in the stock and bond markets. Even if you invest in a very broad basis, you're going to end up making money. Hard to find those NVIDIAs, hard to find those Planetars, hard to find those Robinhoods that have gone up so dramatically, because at the time that the rise increases start is probably not when anybody really wants to be owning the companies because of the low price that they had in the first place. So seek out a professional financial planner to work with and try to follow their advice. And again, we encourage you to work with a CFP professional, because that's always done at a fiduciary standard of care when they provide financial advice.
Right. We've gotten several people who've written in who missed the first part of the show. I want to let people know that you can go back and listen to today's show at any time on iHeart. Just go to Ask the Experts, Money Management Florida, and you can pull up all the shows that Ray has done, or you can go to YouTube. Either way, plus Ray's going to be back again with us in 2 weeks. He's with us every other Monday at 9 a.m. Ray, tell people again how they can reach you.
Absolutely, Stephen. And again, want to remind everybody that we offer a complimentary 1-hour consultation in either our Tampa or Clearwater office or by Zoom. And all you have to do to schedule that with one of our financial planners is to give us a call at 800-633-3049. That's 800-633-3049. Or drop us an email at info at Provise, PROVISE.com, and we'll be happy to schedule that complimentary 1-hour consultation.
Ray, this has been the best 5 years. You are amazing. We love having you. You'll be back again with us in 2 weeks, and we, as always, look forward to that. Thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you, and you take care.
You bet. We're going to go to a short break. When we come back, we've got our next new expert. I'm really excited about it. This is something you all have been asking for. We will be right back.
K. Bender Rembaum is a full-service community association law firm dedicated to the representation of community associations throughout Florida. On kbrlegal.com, you can learn more about their offices in Pompano Beach, Palm Beach Gardens, Orlando, Tampa, as well as throughout Miami-Dade by appointment. Several K. Bender Rembaum attorneys are board-certified specialists in condominium and plan development law and assist clients with all matters of community association legal issues while keeping them up to date on new developments that affect their associations. K. Bender Rembaum is also a well-known provider of free legal education for managers and board members. Contact K. Bender Rembaum today by calling 800-974-0680. That's 800-974-0680 to reach any of their locations. You can also visit them online at kbrlegal.com or write to them at info@kbrlegal.com.
And we are back with the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4TV with your hosts, Steve-O, Sophia, and their expert guests.
Again, South Florida, welcome again to Ask the Experts. We get letters. Everybody says, we email you about different shows, and we always wonder if you read them. Well, first of all, we read every email. But we have had so many people in the South Florida area ask us, why do you not have an estate planning show? Well, first of all, we've only got so much time each week for the show, and we very seldom have openings. We got an opening. We are so lucky to find one of the top estate planning attorneys in South Florida from my backyard in Coral Springs, Florida. Good morning, Andrew Rosenberg.
Hey, good morning, Steve-O. How you doing?
Man, we did it. We normally it takes us about 3 or 4 weeks to get a new expert on with all of our shows we do across the country. But I wanted to get this show on. I want people to know this will be the first Monday of every month at 9:25 Eastern Standard Time. And Andrew and I spent a lot of time talking on the phone. Andrew, we're so lucky to have you.
Well, thanks, Steve. I feel lucky to be on the show. I appreciate you having me on.
Okay, so first of all, tell everybody about your firm and your background.
Sure. So my background is I'm originally from, believe it or not, Indianapolis, Indiana. So I'm a Midwestern kid. And I actually met my wife, Debbie, at Indiana University senior year, and she's from South Florida, and that's how I ended up down here. I knew I was going to marry her, and I said I want to live near family because hopefully we'll have kids one day. And we ended up. I said, "Do you want to live in Indianapolis, where I'm from, in the cold, or do you want to live in sunny South Florida?" And she chose South Florida. So that's how that's how I ended up down here in South Florida, and hence 30 plus years later, married and 2 kids and everything going well. So that's my background real quick. But as far as the background in estate planning, believe it or not, I ended up getting into the estate planning right out of law school because that was the first job I got. So that's kind of how it happened. And I fell in love with it. And I worked with a solo practitioner for many years. And then I started to outgrow that situation. And then I've had several different positions, in-house counsel for insurance agency and all their insurance agents to help with their clientele, with their estate planning and all sorts of other things that I've done in the estate planning arena. But I've always been in estate planning since my practice began. I'm now, I graduated in 94, so I'm getting old. I just had a birthday. I'm now 57. So I've been doing this for quite a long time. It's hard to believe. But I do love doing estate planning, and the firm is you either call it the Rosenberg Law Firm or Andrew G. Rosenberg, PA, and we are based in Coral Springs, Florida. I live in Weston, but we are based in Coral Springs, and I'm the only attorney. I've always had it that way because I always want people to realize if they really need to speak to the attorney, the buck stops with me, and I'm the one that's available. I do have a pretty nice staff. I have 4 or 5 people full-time that work for me and that help me with the entire process. But I am the buck stops with me when it regards to the estate planning and elder law scenario.
Andrew, I hate to put it this way, but a couple of days ago with this plane crash in D.C., I thought about our show today. And, there was a lot of young people who passed. People just don't ever know. I mean, I've talked to friends of mine who are older, and they'll go, "Well, I'm in good health. I don't need to do anything right now." And they put it off to the side. But you think about these people who lost their lives. They weren't expecting, they might have been in the best of health. I got to tell you, Andrew, what you do, and you and I talked for a long time, what you do, you've really got to have a heart for being an estate planning attorney. And I got to tell you, you are so perfect for this. But people really don't know when their last days are.
That's for sure. And I'll tell you a quick story. So you're talking about unexpected, and this plane crash obviously is absolutely horrible. And you got these young, up and coming Olympic skaters.
Yes.
And it's just absolutely horrendous. But I'm going to give you a quick story about myself to give you an idea of what is unexpected. And usually what happens, by the way, Steve-O, is something hits the fan with someone, right? It might be they get diagnosed with cancer, God forbid, or they have a health scare, or they have a good thing. There's a wedding, or there's a grandchild, or a child, or there's always some sort of an event or a friend that unexpectedly passed away. Things happen. But let me give you a good example of how things happen. I'm in pretty good shape. I really take care of myself. I'm a swimmer. I used to competitive swim. I was a Division I tennis player. I actually played at Rutgers University until I blew my knee out, and then transferred to Indiana. But I will tell you, I'm a competitive swimmer. I'm on a swim team, etc. I used to be before COVID. And there was one day swimming with the swim team that, we swim at 6 a.m. With the master swim team. And I just didn't feel right. And I pulled myself out of the water during the beginning of practice. And I told my coach, I said, I think I'm having a low blood sugar attack or something. Can you get me some apple juice? And believe it or not, we all the swimmers know each other. We all know their first names, but no one knows anything about what anyone does. And the one time that this one guy was swimming with me in my lane, he ended up coming out of the water, and he came over to me, said, "Hey, Andy, I'm Chris. Tell me what's going on." And he says, "I'm a cardiologist."
Oh.
So I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then I tell him, I said, "I just don't feel right." And so he makes me lay down on the pool deck, Steve-O, and I'm laying down on that pool deck, and he starts asking me tons of questions. And lo and behold, he says, Andy, I think I'm going to call the hospital and have an ambulance come and have you go to the cardiac unit to be safe. And I end up going into the ambulance. He reads my EKG right then and there, the cardiologist that was the swimmer, Chris. It was completely normal. And when I said it can't be normal, and the reason it can't be normal is the week and a half before I had a nuclear stress test. And my nuclear stress test shows that my normal EKG is abnormal. So I have to carry that in my wallet. So they said, "Well, where is it?" I said, "It's at my house in my wallet." So we had to have my daughter and my wife bring it to the hospital. I went to the hospital, and they were going to release me from the hospital. And lo and behold, my wife and the nurse said, "I look like crap." And they said, "You're not going to release them." And then they run blood work finally. And I come back from changing out of my swimsuit, and they told me to get in the bed as quickly as possible. They said I was on the verge of having a massive heart attack.
Wow.
So I ended up having what's called a widowmaker. I don't know if you've ever heard of a heart attack called the widowmaker.
No.
But basically what it is when you hear people that drop dead of a heart attack like before they hit the ground, that's the widowmaker, because you don't survive. And I had 100% block of the widowmaker. And the only reason I survived, Steve-O, was because I had all these extra collateral arteries built because of how bad of a swimmer I was. And I had to keep up with everybody over the years that my heart needed to build up more oxygen. And so it created all these extra collaterals. And I survived this major, major attack. And 99.4% of the people do not survive that. And
you're in your 50s.
And I was 48.
Wow.
48. So when you talk about not expecting things to happen, that's a prime example. And I will tell you, and I talk about this when I do my workshops, I will tell you that when I was in the hospital in that emergency room, and my wife's freaking out, my daughter's freaking out, and the doctors are really concerned about what's going on, I was as calm as could be. And the reason I was so calm, Steve-O, was because I knew I had everything in place. And I told my wife, I said, if God forbid it's my time, I said, I got enough insurance. I know where everything is. I said, you know where everything is. I have my estate plan in order. We're all in great shape. And she looked at me right in the eyes and shook me and said, I'm not ready for you yet. We got 2 young kids to raise. But when you talk about, this is really needed, and people, when people don't expect to die, no one expects to die. I had a recent guy call me who used to do my landscaping. And he called me and left a message saying, I want to meet with you to do some trust and wills and all that good stuff. We ended up calling. I called him back, left a message, didn't hear from him. Called him the next day, left a message, didn't hear from him. Called him the third day. His wife picked up. He dropped dead unexpectedly of a heart attack between the day he called me and when we were trying to schedule an appointment.
Wow.
So things happen.
And, you know,
unfortunately,
Andy, you and I talked about so surprising. Look at Prince here with all of his money and all of his managers. The guy didn't even have a will.
Yeah. Well, look at Joe Robbie.
Yeah, that's right.
Look at, Joe Robbie from the Miami Dolphins.
Yes.
As organized as they were not organized enough back then to deal with the estate tax problem. And now we don't have that problem really. But back then it was a big issue, and they had to force the family to sell the team. That was why the Robbies sold the team. It wasn't because they wanted to. They had to.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
well,
even the most famous people, a lot of times you hear stories about that. You think that they would be organized and have people take care of them, and it slips through the cracks.
Another thing you said to me, Andy, what really stuck out is you said, I want to keep people out of probate. Now, listen, if you've never been through probate, it could become very expensive. And it's so nice to hear an attorney say, I want to keep you from having a lot of expenses.
Yeah. I mean, people don't realize that probate, at least in Florida, I don't know how it is in other states, but down here in Florida, it's expensive and it's time consuming and it's just not a fun process. And I mean, Steve-O, there's a Florida statute that tells us what the reasonable attorney fee is for it, and it's 3% of any asset. So if you have $1 million home, which is now unfortunately fortunately if you own a home, which I do, but if you're trying to buy a home, it's much more difficult. But if you have a $1 million home, $500,000 home, take 3% of that if it's got to go through probate. And if it's a $500,000 home, it's a $15,000 legal fee. $1 million home, it's a $30,000 legal fee. I really want to avoid that process if I can for the families. And it's so much less expensive if you plan accordingly, and much better for the family to do it proactively than to wait and have someone pass away. But here's what people don't understand, Steve-O, is that people think it's like the movies. You have a will and you pass away, and they think that you're going to go to an attorney's office, sit in a conference room, and they're going to read the document, and then and the credits roll like a movie, and then everything gets dispersed. But that's completely false. So people come to me all the time saying that, oh, I'm fine, I have a will. And I'm like, no, did you know that a will guarantees probate? And they're like, what are you talking about? And that's what people don't get. People don't understand it. Don't understand that process. And that's so here's the difference. And tell me if I'm boring you. I don't mean to bore you, Steve-O.
No, you're doing fine.
Okay. But if someone dies without a will, without any estate plan, in Florida, it's called dying intestate, dying without a will. And that guarantees probate. If you have assets in your name alone, without a beneficiary form, without any beneficiary form, it's in your name, a house, brokerage accounts, whatever, bank accounts, and there's no estate plan, you're going through probate. Okay? Unfortunately, the state of Florida is going to have a statute to tell us where everything goes, and that's usually not where anyone wants it to go. But if you have a will, which is called dying testate, so dying intestates without a will, dying testates with a will. If you have just a will and you have those same accounts, those bank accounts and brokerage accounts and houses in your name, you're also guaranteeing probate. That's what people don't understand.
Wow.
They think that if you have a will, it just goes, and it doesn't.
So, this is why this show is so important. This is not an advertisement for Andrew's law firm. This is Andrew's here taking time out of his schedule to educate you, because there's, especially in estate planning, there's so many different areas, whether it's elder law, whether it's estate plan. And, Andy, who would you say needs estate planning?
So you may be surprised, but what my answer is everybody. And when I mean everybody, I mean everybody. So let me give you an example. I have a lot of clients that have kids that are getting ready to go to college or are in college, right? They're 18 and they're going off to college. A lot of them go to University of Florida or all other parts of the country. And I tell those parents, I said, your kids need estate planning. And they're like, what the heck are you talking about, Andy?
Right.
And I'm like, listen, I know you don't think they're adults, and you and I know they're not adults mentally or financially. They can't afford anything. But in the state of Florida and in the eyes of the state of Florida, they're considered adults. And so what happens is your kid goes off to the University of Florida and gets in a car accident and is in the hospital and needs to make healthcare decisions, and they're not able to make it for themselves. They're unconscious. It's a bad car accident, which has happened with my clients. If you don't have the proper estate planning documents, you're not going to legally be able, the doctors won't talk to you. The medical providers won't legally talk to you without the proper estate planning documents. So I always tell people, if you have an 18-year-old kid going off somewhere, they need to have some basic estate plan. And it's not necessarily a will. It might be a durable power, or it might be a healthcare surrogate, or both. And those are important things. If you're older and you don't think you have assets, you still need to have basic estate planning. If you have a ton of assets, you definitely need estate planning. So I tell everybody, estate planning is meant for everybody. It doesn't mean that you have to have the most expensive stuff in the world, but you need to have some of the basics. And that's really what's important about it.
I don't know who labeled it estate planning, but that throws everybody off. They go, estate. Oh, I don't have an estate, but you're really right. It's actually everybody should do this. And, there's so many things. And I told you the show goes by really fast.
Yeah.
And it does. Tell people why they should retain you as their attorney when it comes to estate planning.
Well, I would hope they would want to retain me. Hopefully, number one, I try to cut through the BS and tell you exactly how it's going to work. I mean, I know with the workshops that I have that I've been doing recently, that people like the fact that I answer all their questions, and I make sure that people ask questions at those workshops because I want to make it interactive. And a lot of times people will meet with attorneys and they won't give them the full answer. They'll only give them a part of the answer because then they want to make sure that the attorney wants to make sure that they get hired. And I'm of the opinion, just do the right thing. Tell them exactly what's going to happen, pros and cons, and then give them options, and then let them make the educated decisions and just be upfront and honest. Look, I try to be honest, and I'm an upfront Jewish Midwestern kid. So my job is, and I'm not a New Yorker, not against New Yorkers, but I have a different personality. So I want to really help people and make sure that I bring it down to a level that makes sense. And then you have options. And a lot of people think that they have to get, trust and all this other stuff. And a lot of times I try to do it a different way where they can spend less money and get the same job done without having to spend as much money. And that's really what I try to do. And, I'm not the right fit for everybody. I'll be the first one to tell everybody that. But, there's a reason why I think that I have 400 plus Google reviews and I'm 5.0 rating, because I try and do the right thing.
Now, you do seminars, don't you, Andy?
I do a lot of workshops, yes. I'm actually doing one.
When's your next workshop?
Yeah, well, I'm actually doing I got two coming up. But one is a private workshop for Medicaid planning for a facility. But the upcoming public workshop I have is coming up I forget what the date is, February 12th, I think.
We've got it on the
Yeah,
scroll
it's coming
right
up.
now.
It's in Pembroke Pines, and it's going to be called Essentials for Estate Planning. And I always tell people that these workshops are very interactive. If I want you to come, I want you to ask questions, because if I sit there, I could talk the whole time, but that's not going to help anybody. I'd rather have people ask me questions while we're going through it, and because everyone else is thinking about those questions as well. Yeah, it is. It's February 12th, by the way, in Pembroke Pines at Total Wine. But those workshops I make it an hour and 15 minutes start to finish. Whether we're done or not, I make sure we get done. And it's really interactive, no cost, but you have to call to reserve a spot because there's only so many spaces we have available. And we tend to get a very good turnout for these workshops.
Yeah, I want to tell all of my friends over at the Polo Club, we've got so many listeners who listen on iHeart at the Polo Club. I am telling you, and I don't endorse very many of our experts. I mean, it just, they're all there for a reason, but I feel so good about Andrew. It's Andrew Rosenberg. And especially all my friends over at the Polo Club. If you're in the Delray Boca area, you know exactly where I mean. Andrew, again, tell people how they can reach you.
Sure. The main office is located in Coral Springs at 5421 North University Drive, Suite 101.
Right off the Sawgrass.
Right off of the Sawgrass Expressway and University Drive, right there. And then my main office phone number is 954-755-7803. And I can guarantee you that I will not be answering the phone. My staff will be answering the phone to make sure, that things get done properly. And then my email address, if you need to email me, is Andrew, ANDREW, and then at rosenberglawfirm.net, ROSENBERG, lawfirm.net.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm looking at my cell phone right now. We've gotten 4 text messages. It's really funny. 2 of them say, I was one of the ones that emailed you to have an estate planning program. Thanks for listening. And all of them are saying, what a great show. Thank you for bringing this show to us. We are so excited about this show. And Andrew will be with us again next month. He's on with us the first Monday of the month, right behind Ray Ferrara, Provice Management. And Andrew, what a great first show. And we will see you again next month.
Sounds great, Steve. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Hopefully
it was wonderful.
All right. Good. I'm glad everybody.
I told you it goes by fast.
One. What's that?
I told you it goes by fast.
It goes fast. Yes, it does.
Okay, Randy. We'll see you again next month. God bless you.
Thanks, Steve-O.
That's Andrew Rosenberg, attorney Andrew Rosenberg. He's our new estate planning attorney in South Florida. We are so lucky to have him. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week. Stay tuned for tonight. We have our Eat and Critique show at 6 p.m. Again, same place, same station. Thank you, Rebel. We'll see you all next week.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.